before we get into the deep stuff, let's give some basics or some things I want to do inquiry from the others. Walk me through the Santa Fe Institute. What was it about the time of the math? And this was in the late 90s. So they're not going to hear me on this part, right? We're going to do it both ways?
It will not be on the video, but we do have you recorded.
Fine. Remember, when you're answering on these questions, I'm not in the shot, and they're never going to hear my voice. So a little bit you got to repeat in your answer, you got to repeat what my question was.
Oh,
a little bit.
Okay.
Santa Fe Institute. Why, when you're at the top of your game on Wall Street, do you decide to finance, which was at the time, or endow, or become the donor or sponsor, however you want to say it, for what was considered the most cutting edge group of mathematicians in the world? Action.
So Santa Fe Institute in the late 80s, early 90s, I was interested, I was on the board of Rockefeller. So that starts, Rockefeller, it's university formed by John D. Rockefeller to sort of give back to the community. It's east side of Manhattan, except it was old. It was sort of old-fashioned. They were talking about medicine, and medicine by itself was, again, subject to the ideas of science. They were trying to use science to find cures for disease. And I said, no, we need to do something different. We need to start interdisciplinary work. In most...
How did a schmuck like you get on the board of Rockefeller? What year was that?
I don't remember. Late, I think 89 and 91.
So that's one of the most prestigious research places in the world, correct?
Yes.
Okay, how did a guy like you get on the board of a blue blood, internationally known, hard research, Nobel Prize winners all over the place? How do they pick a guy like you, a trader from, or basically some guy from Bear Stearns?
Good question. So I was asked to be on the board of Rockefeller, and I think it was, I was on the board of Rockefeller, there was a money manager who said, Rockefeller needs someone with financial expertise because the university is growing and there's lots of new things. You have to, again, we go back to the original discussion the last time. Up until the mid-'80s or sort of early mid-'70s, the most important thing was your name. If you were Rockefeller, you already were considered to be brilliant. If you were head of General Motors, it was your reputation. It was who you knew, who your family was, what was your character. And then in the mid-'70s, basically, if you remember, you probably had a calculator. It was very advanced in those days to have a Texas Instrument calculator, where it could, by putting in the numbers, it would multiply for you to do square roots. And that was the first, and everyone who had a calculator was already advanced on Wall Street. A simple calculator, almost like your accountant. The most important parts of business were really now going to calculations. So it's not only mathematics, but it's things that could be calculated. Reputation couldn't be calculated. I could give you, are you a 10 on a reputation scale, an 8? What does it mean to have a measurement of your reputation? We'll get to that later. But places like Rockefeller needed someone to say, look, we're entering a different world where numbers and the numbers of companies, portfolio management was going to be balanced. It was going to be statistical. Jeffrey, could you come on the board? Potentially sit on the finance committee, Nancy Kissinger and a bunch of other people. And David Rockefeller and I got along very well. He was an unbelievable human being. Respectful to everyone. He introduced his driver as his colleague, not his driver. He would never say, this is my driver. He said, it's my colleague. And David started to explain to me world politics. So David would say, Jeffrey, money is going to be sort of the most important things. People don't understand money. You seem to have this knack for money. I said to David, tell me about your life. What was the worst and the best part of your life? So David said, when I grew up, everyone knew I was a Rockefeller. They didn't know that my father told me he would not leave me a dime. No money. But every time we went out to eat, me and my 5 friends in school, they would leave me the bill. They would expect me to pick up the check because I was a Rockefeller. And he said, I was chairman of Chase Bank. And he said, I remember like it was yesterday, one of the headlines in Time magazine said, David please fire yourself. So he thought that there was a world that existed that would be a combination of both politics and business and leadership. What do I mean? He formed something called the Trilateral Commission. The Trilateral Commission is some spooky stuff. People said it was some of the people that, the Illuminati, there's some mystery about it, people that ran the world. It was politicians, but David said most countries, the politicians get elected for 4 years or 8 years, separate from the royal families in England or in the Middle East. Someone's there for 4 years and then they're not there anymore. The most important people to have stability and consistency would be businessmen. So he formed this Trilateral Commission of businessmen and politicians from 3 major continents. So it was the North Americans, the Europeans, and the Asians. So he said to me, would you like to be on the Trilateral Commission? Now, I was 30 years old, 32 years old. I said, great. And he said, well, you have to fill out this application so they have your bio. And I looked at the list of people, and it was Bill Clinton, former president of the United States, Paul Volcker, every great leader in America, the Asians, the Japanese, and with a very long description of their history. And they asked me to fill in what I would like to have written. And I wrote Jeffrey Epstein, comma, just a good kid, which I thought was funny, nobody else did. So in answer to your question, at that time I recognized around the world that monies and currencies were not really well understood. But again, it was only numbers. So numbers, and I'll get to the fact that it was bad thinking. Numbers are very good.
Are most people that you meet, even on Trilateral Commission, when you meet most people, do you find most leaders financially illiterate, economically illiterate? Most political leaders don't come out of a background of finance. Most political leaders come out of a background of being popular. So in some of the countries, in some of the African countries, for example, they might have been a military person. They were a general. In some of the African countries, they might have been a disc jockey. Or in our country, they would have been an actor. The knowledge of money isn't, they don't have expertise, they have no degrees in finance. They really, they don't have expertise, they have no degrees in finance. And this is one of the major problems. Their expertise, if they have any financial knowledge, is of their own checking account or bank account and filling in their own taxes. So many world leaders who don't really have a financial underpinning make fundamental errors when it comes to money on a country or institutional level. Let me give you an example. If you, Mr. Bannon, if I said your assets increased last year, you'd say, that sounds pretty good. And I'd say, what does that mean to you? You'd say, well, I have more money. I guess I'm wealthier. I'd say, yes. And if your debt increased, would you feel wealthier or poorer? You'd say, well, I don't want to have increased debt. I don't like the idea of that sound, increased debt. Now, that and world leaders understand when their assets go up, they feel better. However, institutions like banks, things that people don't really understand are financial underpinnings of banks. When I say your bank, Mr. Bannon, you have the Bannon Bank, you doubled your assets. Sounds good, but what does it really mean? It means people owe you more money. You don't have any more money. What? Yeah. A bank's assets are how much it is owed by other people. That's crazy. So if the bank goes from $2 billion of assets to $10 billion, it means
People owe it an additional $8 billion, but their assets have gone up. So the terminology of assets and liabilities is different for banks. It's not natural. And what most people, and you ask questions about world leaders, there's many people, I think your old boss Mercer understood, there's a fundamental part of money which is called fractionalized banking. And fractionalized banking is something that finance people understand, and the people on the street, and when I say people on the street, that's where I was when I started on Wall Street, would find it impossible to believe. Impossible. Why? Bank, I give you $1, just one single dollar. In our system of banking, I would say, okay, Steve, I gave you $1. How much could you lend out to your friends? And your natural reaction would be probably something less than $1 because I want to keep something in my pocket. The way our system works is if you as a bank are holding my dollar, you can lend out an additional $8 or $9. No, it's impossible. I only have $1, Jeffrey. We have something called fractionalized reserves, which is if you have 1, you can lend out 9. That's the way our system works. And so not only do world leaders not understand banking, but the man on the street, my father who worked in the park department, it would be beyond his imagination that people could lend out more money than they actually had in their pocket. Next question.
Wait, how did this, in understanding that, when you get on something like the Trilateral Commission, you're on the board at Rockefeller, which is the most advanced research. You get brought into the Trilateral, which is the elite of the elite. How, since you're only at that time
30-something years old.
8 years from teaching at Dalton, right? You're a Dalton.
No, 10 years.
10 years teaching at Dalton.
Yes.
Walk us through. I mean, put us in the room. Walk me through exactly what it felt like. What it felt like being on the board at Rockefeller. You got these Nobel laureates, and you're sitting there making decisions, and you start to meet these people at Rockefeller. And you start to meet these people at the Trilateral Commission. What did it feel like?
It's a great question. So what did it feel
That's
like?
what I'm in the business of asking.
Yeah. What did it feel like meeting some of these people like Kissinger or Rockefeller? And those are two extraordinary people. But in general, I think the question, the people on Wall Street, I tell the story, the first day, one of the first days when I was in Wall Street, someone said to me, would you like to buy ATV? And I was looking in the brochure, and I couldn't figure out what stock had a symbol of ATV. And when I finally said, well, I can't find it, and they said, what's the matter with you? Do you want to buy ATV? Which is, he was selling hot televisions, stolen televisions from the floor of the American Stock Exchange, referred to in common parlance as the televisions fell off the truck. So I knew what that phrase meant from Coney Island. But what I found was most people, be it in business, in normal life, or in the world leaders, don't really understand money. It is something they think about. They have a sense of what it is. They certainly want more of it. But they also make statements like, we want more money, but we don't want more debt, which just shows a misunderstanding of what money at its core really is. So most people don't, they want to make it, they want to save it, but to understand it intimately is not a normal characteristic.
At the first Trilateral or something?
Yeah, good.
Just give me an approximate. You joined the Trilateral Commission.
I think it might be.
And we'll be able to show we'll pull down the chart of where your name was, but just give me roughly when it was.
I think it could be 90. I don't remember.
Okay. Let's
Sorry.
say early 90s.
Yes.
When you got on the Trilateral Commission and had do you remember where the first meeting was?
It was in Tokyo.
In Tokyo. And at what hotel?
I would like to say the Hilton, but it's probably not.
And it's a 3-day, 4-day? Give me some
3-day event, and
walk me through the whole thing.
Speeches.
It starts with a dinner. Just walk me through it.
It was boring.
You couldn't possibly think it was boring. It's
It
bullshit.
was boring.
You had to be stars in your eyes.
No.
Did you fly over privately?
Yes, but it wasn't my plane.
So it didn't count?
No.
You fly over.
Yes.
And
it was
who were the first, like when you first met those leaders, you had to be wowed.
No.
You're 10 years out of Coney Island.
No, I'm not wowed by people of position. I'm wowed by people of great ideas. And I don't care if it's the bus driver. I don't care if it's the student I had who has teeth coming out
Well,
every
these
direction.
guys have to have great ideas. They're the leaders of the three great continents of the world: North America, Europe, and Japan.
No, many of these world leaders become world leaders because they're popular and they were able to get votes, or they were able to convince people to vote for them. I learned later. Many of them were just good at what they did in terms of politics. Remember, world leaders are politicians in general. They're not scientists, they're not intellectuals, they're not great thinkers, they're great politicians.
At the first Trilateral Commission meeting that you remember in Tokyo, sometime in the early 90s, do you remember what were the big issues of the day that they were talking about, and what did you think about it?
Yeah, in fact, it was funny because they were talking about inflation.